In the course of composing for a game, though, do you use an orchestra, real orchestra often?
Often it depends on the game. Again, I did a game for Valve called Artifact where the entire score was orchestra and choir. I had composed the score and then went to Utah to record them at that time. And so that game was entirely all real musicians. I mean, the whole score was real. With Dota, it depends. It's like some if I'm doing a big update for a game for the game, and there's a huge trailer coming out or something like that, then I'll go record the orchestra. I did that also with a game called Counter-Strike, where we were doing a trailer when they sort of did an update on the engine and an update on the game. So it required a high quality trailer and high quality music for it. So I recorded the orchestra then. Not to say that the samples aren't high quality as well. And in some cases, it's difficult for me to tell the difference if somebody does a really good job on tweaking their samples. But I prefer to use an orchestra whenever I can. And obviously, the live stuff there's no other way at a live performance for the tournaments.
Although I have seen some concerts, some rock concerts, where I think what they did, general way to approach it was all the stuff in the middle is samples, and you bring live players in for the lows and the highs, and I'm talking about a string section, and that gives it the feeling of being real, more real than it is.
Yeah, and we do that to a certain extent. I mean, oftentimes there's synth pads and things in there that you just can't recreate live. So we always have backing tracks that I have to sync up to. And sometimes we're also synced up to video. And in the case at Climate Pledge 2 years ago, we had I think it was 2 years ago, we had an old AR setup that was going on. So if you're watching the stream, the music was actually synced to what was going on in the whole arena. And there was video that was happening on top of it and everything. So we're synced up, and I've got a click track going and have the orchestra synced up to that. And any cues that need to be hit for synthesizers or percussion that maybe we can't do live, that's all on a background track.
How long does it take you to do a full composition? And I'm not talking about the composition part, I'm talking about the recording and everything for the soundtrack for a game.
Well, again, that really varies. I mean, there's games that I've worked on where I've only had a few months, and then there's other games where they've been in development for years. And so you kind of write the music, as things develop, and there's a lot of iteration that goes into it at that point. It's a really tough question to answer with one answer. I worked on a game with a company called Cyan, which is up here in Spokane, and the game was in development for 5 or 6 years. And so I was constantly writing music for it, and then that whole area would change for whatever reason. So we'd have to either rewrite it or implement it differently, and that took a lot of time. They also rewrote the engine during that period of time, so a lot of things changed. And I wasn't doing just music at the time too. I was doing sound design for it as well. But I worked on that game for, I want to say 5 or 6 years. And then on the other end of the spectrum, I've had games where I've kind of thrown stuff over the fence, whereas I'm working on it and I give them music, and it's maybe a few months just to write, 30, 40 minutes worth of music, whatever it may be. So it really varies.
You just mentioned sound design. So was that kind of a natural extension of what you were doing, of
I think it is.
composition?
I think it is, because it's kind of like composition, only with sound elements as opposed to music elements. And the way I got into that was kind of interesting, because the first job that I was just telling you about, where I got hired at Broderbund, they hired me as a composer. And I went in and interviewed with the director there, and he said, "Oh," as I was leaving, he says, "Well, about half the job is going to be a sound design. You have a problem with that?" And it's like, and I kind of said no, and I'd never done it before. But just like, I kind of learned it on the job. But again, I was comfortable in that realm with doing digital audio manipulation and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a stretch. Definitely wasn't a stretch.
I read something this morning about how the gaming industry is in trouble because of too many games. What's your take on that?
The industry itself, I think, kind of ebbs and flows that way. When I first started at Broderbund, there wasn't enough, right? And so the industry was just expanding and blowing up. And then about 2 years into it, I want to say, the exact opposite happened. Everybody was doing it. And next thing you know, companies are folding and there's layoffs like crazy. So it kind of goes through those cycles, depending on, during COVID, there wasn't enough because everybody was home playing games. And so now things are changing again. In the last year or so, there's been a lot of studios that have closed down and a lot of people have been laid off. and it's part of the cycle. Unfortunately, there's no even keel in this industry where you can say, okay, there's constant growth at this rate. It just doesn't work that way. It's an up and down industry, and so you kind of have to go with it. I've been very fortunate to work for a company, Valve Software, that is pretty stable, and they also distribute games as well. They have a platform called Steam, which helps support the company. So it's not an issue if we don't have a game that's coming out next month to support the one that we just put out. It's not a huge issue. So we have a little bit more luxury that way in having time to develop a game.